Step number 5 is defining activities. This is truly the most difficult piece of putting together a project schedule. Not because of how to figure out how to use Primavera, but truly it's difficult because you have to be able to go through the drawings and go through the specs to determine what tasks are necessary in order to get the project done. So you can see why it can be difficult, especially for someone who is new to construction. So there's two different things that we need to do when we define activities. We need to define them by task or define them by milestone. Okay. If we're going to define them by milestone, we simply go, we have our sample project here. Let's go ahead and say we're going to go ahead and add a task. So we click on the top WBS. We'll hit add a task underneath the activities tab. Okay, we're going to go ahead and not use the wizard because this is for beginners and we're not beginners, right? We want to name it NTP. So that's a milestone. Obviously, a milestone has a duration of 0, and milestones are indicated by diamonds. Okay, so let's go ahead and develop a task. So we'll go ahead and we'll go to say submittal development. We'll click on that WBS. We'll hit add, and we'll say submittal development, and say 030000, a concrete submittal. Just say concrete. Okay. So we've created a task. We identify exactly what it is. We've created a milestone. We indicated what it's going to be, and I'll go back and say it again. This is the most difficult because you got to understand how to read drawings. You have to understand how to read specifications, and you have to be able to develop tasks from those. What I find to be efficient and effective is to sit down and just go through the drawings, spend 1 minute on each of them, and just write down a whole bunch of notes of what task you see taking place. You'll see some pages there'll be a whole bunch of tasks, and on other pages there won't be many. So it's something that just takes some skill to reading the drawings and coming up through. Let's talk about naming structure here. The naming structure is important because you got to be able to name everything by verb noun. Once again, to make it clear, verb noun. I like to even say quantifiable. If it's not 100%, then we'd want to actually specify 50% or 25%. So if we're talking verb noun here, you see NTP. NTP is strictly a noun. How about we put an action there? So we'll say issue. So we have a verb noun, and we don't need to say 100% because we know that. So we can just say issue NTP, and that is okay. It's assumed it's 100%. If it's less than 100%, then we're going to say that. See here we say submittal development, right? Submittal development, and then it has what submittal is going to be. We can say develop submittal, verb noun, right? And then we specify exactly what it is. Having a naming structure accurate is important. Verb noun makes it clear, provides clarity. It's just saying submittal. That doesn't say exactly what it means. It's very, very specific. This is important because if the project is phased, it can make it difficult if you're not very specific. If this was going to be phase 1, phase 2, although it may be in the WBS what the phasing is, it's important in the task 2 to actually go in and say what it would be like in phase 1, because if you're able to remove or compress the WBS or go to a various different levels, the phasing may be lost in the WBS. So it's important that we're very clear what task is taking place. The different views on the WBS make that and here's a good example here. If you remember the views that we go right here to the group and sort. And if we don't go to level 4, say we only go to level 2, okay? Oh shoot, excuse me. And we go to level 2, all the other WBS is lost in there, and we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that if all the WBS is lost when we look at different level, we want to make sure we still understand what task it is, what phase it is, what part of it actually is. Tasks do not have to be overly specific. Now, what I want to do is I want to go back to the other project, right? The preliminary schedule project. Excuse me, I didn't mean that one. I meant the baseline schedule. We were looking at the preliminary, and this is the sample that we're going to use kind of going forward in some of the future videos. Why did I bring this up? I brought this up is because you don't have to be overly specific in what we're doing here. We go through and we say, okay, things like site work, for example. Okay, exterior final grade. We can say something has an exterior final grade and it's fairly, that's a fairly large scope. As long as it falls in less than 20 duration days, we're okay. Remember, most of our tasks we want to have that in here that will be between 2 and 12 days. The most common question I get is what level of detail is required. You could go in and say exterior final grade north, exterior final grade south. You could be that specific, or you can say exterior final grade. What determines, first of all, what determines how detailed it has to be? Well, really, whatever the approval authority, whoever that is, if they say it has to be a specific level, you kind of have to comply with that. However, 2 to 12 days is a typical if we, a typical level detail that's appropriate. Okay, we don't want everything to be 20 days, but we don't want everything to be 1 day. Okay, so if every task you have is between 1 to 3 days, then your schedule is probably overly detailed. So most activities should be between 2 and 12. One thing I want to talk to you about is spelling. Okay, spelling, capitalization, format. Format of verb, noun, quantifiable. Consistency is important. When you do not provide consistency in the schedule, what you do is you provide it easy for the reviewer to drill deeper. So if they see an obvious misspelling, they will drill deeper into your schedule. So if you want to get a schedule approved the first time, the best thing you can do is make sure everything is spelled correctly. We capitalize all the first letter of every single word in there. You can see I have exterior final grade, each one of those capitalized. As long as there's consistency, everything's spelled right, there's consistency in the naming structure, everything is capitalized the same, you make it basically from initial perspective, you make it look presentable, and they're less likely to drill deeper. So we always want to make sure that we do that. We can also go through and look at all of our spelling, make sure our spelling is correct, using the spell check tool. So there's something to be said for consistency in the schedule. You may realize when you go through and you look at the schedule that there may be a greater level of detail in the work breakdown structure that's necessary. You want to maybe break it up, by into some greater detail to provide some clarity in the outline, and you can do that. You can do that after the fact. That's okay. But in this step, we're really defining activities. If we find that the definition of activity needs to have a greater clarity in its work breakdown structure, we can easily go back, take a step back, and then look at that. So, okay, in summary, we've gone through how we define activities. We talked about how difficult this can be. Something you have to be able to read drawings and specs and have some knowledge of construction to be able to develop. We want to make sure we have all the tasks in there in their entirety. We want to make sure that the naming structure is correct, verb, noun, quantifiable. We want to make sure that when we have different views within the schedule, that the different views will allow when the different work breakdown structures are shown, the naming structure of the individual task or milestone will easily allow us to be able to identify what the tasks mean. We talked about the fact that reviewers will drill deeper if they see spelling issues, capitalization issues, and if there's an issue with consistency. So that pretty much covers all step number 5.